This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Hello there and welcome to Global Business Africa. We'll be giving you insight into Africa's business and financial markets. I'm Uche Okoronkwo coming to you from Kenya's capital, Nairobi. Let's start with a look at the markets. Now, global markets started off the week on a positive note as risk appetite increases. Traders say some of the concerns over China's regulatory crackdown eased today. And of course, progress on a U.S. infrastructure spending plan aided sentiment. Now, emerging market stocks rose today after a bruising month led by gains in China. MSCI's index of emerging market stocks rose 1% on the day. Meanwhile, South Africa's JSE saw stocks trading just 1% shy of 5-month highs. Bank stocks rose about 0.9% as we saw the rand strengthen. Also, MTN, a big gainer today after its Nigerian unit reported increased profit, which of course is the company's largest market. Now, also coming up on the show today, Tanzania's central bank pumps up cash to boost lending to the private sector. A ban on American investment in 59 Chinese firms takes effect on Monday. And Africa's most populous nation turns to prefabrication housing technology. Well, we kick off tonight's show in Tanzania, where the central bank is directing $432 million to financial institutions in the country to help them lend more to the private sector. Now, the move is in an effort to mitigate the economic impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic in the country. Here's CGTN's Isaac Lukando with more.
Tanzania's economy had experienced close to 7% growth for a decade before the COVID-19 pandemic brought the momentum to a halt. The country's central bank now wants to give the economy a boost by getting more businesses to borrow. It says despite improvements in recent times, current borrowing rates are not encouraging.
Loans from commercial banks to the private sector had grown by 15%, and lending rates had gone down from 20 to 17%. But that is still a very high rate.
The central bank plans to guarantee loans to the private sector so that they are issued at a more affordable interest rate. This economist says achieving this will not be easy.
If you have an economy whereby top 4 banks, all of them, they have got the very same structure, lending to employees instead of lending to SMEs and businesses, it takes a lot of time, and it will take a very long time for the private sector to flourish, because there's no private sector that can flourish in an environment such as this one, because you'll be guaranteed that whenever you ask for a loan, your loan will be declined.
Tanzania's economy dropped to 2% growth last year on the back of the COVID-19 pandemic, but performed well compared to the rest of Africa. Avoiding lockdowns and increased revenue from the mining sector helped the country survive the worst effects of the pandemic. According to the World Bank, the COVID-19 pandemic has contributed to the deterioration of business sales and incomes in Tanzania. As a result, the number of Tanzanians living in poverty is estimated to have increased by 600,000 last year. The central bank says its push for affordable loans is specifically targeting the agricultural sector, which employs at least 65% of the population. The bank hopes the move will have far-reaching effects.
Now is not the time that we're going to sell a luxury good like tourism. So the only good that we can sell right now is necessities. Necessities are food. Food, we obtain them from agribusiness, fishing, and farming, like, livestock keeping. So that is the sector the government is trying to focus on, which is a very big plus.
The central bank has forecast a 5.6% growth rate for the economy this year. It hopes favorable lending rates will help achieve this goal, boosting bottom lines for businesses and improving lives. Isaac Lukando, CGTN, Dar es Salaam.
Meanwhile, in Tunisia, the central bank says the country needs to put in place international financial reporting standards to help guide the operations of its financial sector. Now, IFRS was created to improve transparency as well as accountability and efficiency of financial markets around the world. Here's Adnan Shaushi with more.
The Institute of Chartered Accountants of Tunisia said that the Tunisian financial sector's adoption of international financial reporting standards will help ensure good governance, competitive equity and transparency in the regulation of the banking market.
The adoption of the International Financial Reporting Standards is an important strategic reform for the economy in general and the financial sector in particular. These standards are a common international accounting language, allowing for uniform financial reporting that promotes comparability of performance and capital flow.
The president of the Tunisian Professional Association of Banks and Financial Institutions explained that there are many challenges facing the implementation of those international standards in the country.
The first problem is the readiness of Tunisian banks and financial institutions for the adoption of these international standards. Most banks do not have the required data and information to respect internationally recognized accounting standards. The second problem is the mentality of the clients, who may not be willing to provide personal information to the banks.
The head of the Union of Maghreb Banks says adopting international standards will allow Tunisian banks to mobilize external resources.
30% of the Tunisian banking sector is made up of banks with foreign capital. They are already implementing IFRS standards and did not wait for 2021. This is a good example for other Tunisian banks seeking external funding.
Experts say implementing the IFRS project needs to be monitored by the Central Bank of Tunisia as part of its strategic plan. The Central Bank of Tunisia said that the IFRS standardization system compels Tunisian authorities to be more demanding in terms of transparency and governance. The governor of the Apex Bank stressed the need to implement this single set of high-quality global standards. Adnan Shawishi, CGTN, Tunis.
And now look at our corporate headlines today. HSBC Bank says its pre-tax profit has more than doubled to $10.8 billion in the first half of the year. Boosted by the economic rebound in its Britain and Hong Kong markets, the bank has also reinstated dividend payments to shareholders, targeting a dividend payout ratio of 40 to 55% of its reported earnings per ordinary share, with an interim dividend of 7 cents per ordinary share. Meanwhile, Kenya Airways will wait no longer to resume scheduled flights on its Indian routes. This comes after Kenya's aviation regulator extended restrictions on the route for another 30 days. Now, Kenyan citizens and Indians who are local residents are allowed to fly in on charter flights, but they have to undergo a 14-day quarantine and present a negative COVID-19 certificate taken 96 hours before flying. And in a bid to stay ahead of its rivals, ride-hailing firm Bolt has unveiled a new feature that enables drivers on its platform to withdraw income. The new feature comes on the back of persistent agitation by ride-hailing drivers for better pay amid rising operating costs, such as fuel expenses. And a man who accused Safaricom of seizing his idea to launch M-Pesa payments using a simple tap of a card, a wristband or phone sticker has now lost his bid to be paid about $2 million by the firm. Jonathan Gikabu claimed that M-Pesa One Tap was his brainchild after selling the idea to Safaricom in 2014. Now, a High Court judge dismissed the case, saying he failed to prove that Safaricom seized the idea from him. That's a look at our corporate headlines. Well, let's take a short break now, still coming up on the show. We'll be looking at growing investment in Africa's worrying housing sector, as well as why some Nigerians are desperate to leave the country.
The world economy as we know it is about to change. Global business reports highlight emerging markets, developing countries, and dynamic sectors worldwide. We feature top analysts and newsmakers to provide perspectives on every facet of business. From an on-the-ground perspective, we provide you with balanced and objective assessments. Fast, sharp, and insightful. Global Business, only on CGTN.
Every story starts out like this.
Okay. We'll head up now.
But beyond the rush of the numbers, there's always a more fundamental question. What happened? Who has been affected? When market-moving decisions are made, who's responsible? And why?
Let's get some reaction on ground. Joining us in Johannesburg is Sutra. Hello, Nairobi.
This is how all stories begin. See how they end. Only on Global Business.
There's more to this place than just glorious landscapes. There's more to it than just, say, Table Mountain or glorious, endless salt flats. There's more to it than countries that are home to some of the deepest mines in the world. There is so much more to this place, even if it is home to some of the finest diamonds on the planet. It is the sheer diversity of the people who call Southern Africa home, and the relentless drive to make it a better place that make it so special. And we know that because this too is home. No one knows Southern Africa like we do. CGTN, see the difference.
Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and Global Business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues from taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN.
Welcome back. Now, Kenya has acquired an additional 3.9% stake in Shelter Afrique for $9.2 million. The extra capital has moved Kenya's shareholding in the firm to 18.72% from the 14.82% it held in December. Now, Shelter Afrique is a Pan-African housing, finance and development institution. It has also received about $3.5 million additional capital subscription from the government of Cameroon. Now, 7 other nations have also given additional capital, bringing the received total in the last 6 months to about $18.02 million. Well, let's talk about the company's plans for the coming years. We're joined by Andrew Chimponda. He's the managing director at Shelter Afrique. Great to have you with us today, sir. Now, of course, this year alone, we've seen the organization see about 8 nations giving the firm additional capital, also settling their capital subscription arrears, and also upping their capital subscription in Shelter Afrique. So certainly that brings, as we mentioned, fresh capital received this year so far to about $18 million. So, sir, take us through the company's plans for these new funds. What are your plans to finance new investments going forward?
Thank you very much, Uche. I hope you can hear me clearly. I would like to say that I want to take the opportunity to obviously greet your viewers and also to thank the member states that have shown great confidence in Shelter Afrique. Just a slight correction. So we've received additional capital from Tanzania of 2.7 million and also Democratic Republic of Congo, another 500,000. So for I think the 7 months to date in 2021, we've actually received $21 million in terms of capital from the 10 countries, the big ones being, of course, Kenya, you've mentioned, Cameroon, Mali, and of course, Tanzania now. So what is important is to note that capital is very important in terms of strengthening the balance sheet of Shelter Afrique. So our plans is to take the capital that's been paid to date, paid up capital is $150 million US dollars. We intend to take that capital to be able to leverage debt from developmental financial institutions, another $600 million on a 1-to-4 leverage ratio. And that is what we're going to use now to fund housing projects throughout the 44 member states where we operate from. So we invest in project finance, through public-private partnerships, in low-cost, large-scale housing delivery, and also we invest in banks that are also providing mortgage loans, incremental microfinance loans for houses, so that at least we can deal with the demand side of housing through the creation of units of low-cost housing and also the supply side of housing.
Well, I'd just like to say thank you for that correction, but this additional capital and capital subscription certainly showing the confidence that African nations now have in Shelter Afrique, and it certainly has been a journey back to profitability for the organization. We all know back in 2017 it was heavily in debt. In March this year, you did announce a return to profitability for the 2020 financial year. Give us a sense of your strategy in getting the company's loan book and certainly its operations back in the green since your appointment in 2018.
Oh, thank you very much, Uche. So I think the first thing is having a supportive, strong and competent board to allow the management team, myself and the team, to be able to implement the board-approved strategies. So the first thing we did was we had a non-performing loan book. We had to now create a strategic business unit that's just focused on drawing the capital, or let's call it the cash that was locked into these non-performing loans. What we did was we completed the projects and then sold them off. We exercised our step-in rights so that we could collect cash from those projects. We collected in excess of $30 million from those non-performing loans. The other thing is we agreed a historic milestone, what is called a debt restructure agreement with all our 8 lenders. In those 8 lenders, we've got 6 developmental financial institutions to take their debt, which was 3 years ago about $300 million, and say we're going to pay it off by 2024. I'm pleased to say that as I speak to you now, end of June 2021, we actually paid all the debt. We don't have any debt. We paid all our DFI lenders. We paid them the interest. We pay them their capital 3 months in advance. So of course, the aggressive collection of our loan book, our existing loan book, and also our non-performing loan book allowed us to generate enough cash to pay them back. Mind you, we do not use the capital we've been receiving from our shareholders or member states. So that's been historic. So of course, the reduction of at least more than 70 to 80% in finance costs, or the interest we're paying these DFI lenders, helped us reach profitability, number one. Number two, for us now starting to increase the assets under management post the debt restructure agreement, which was reached in May of 2020, we're now able to start lending again, of course, under stringent credit policies that we had implemented. And when you increase your assets under book, you also increase your interest income. And I think the other thing to note here is that, of course, we also employed stringent cost reduction kind of strategies, which have actually paid off. So it's been good. 5 years of, let's call it recurrent losses. We now posted a profit in 2020 of at least $2 million, and we expect to post a profit, of course, in 2021 as well. So that's been good because shareholders are happy that their capital that they're injecting into Shelter Afrique is not being eroded. In actual fact, they'll be asking for paying dividends, and I hope that they'll reinvest that money that they want for dividends into supporting housing projects throughout the whole of Africa.
Right. And also, in addition to lending, again, we know you've said that you're reviewing various capital raising options, including issuing local currency bonds, possibly. You've also entered into a partnership with the World Bank to boost your capital market program. What progress have you made in that area?
Thanks, Uche. Well, I have to obviously express my gratitude to the World Bank because they gave us a technical assistance grant of 200,000 to assist us to effectively enter into the local capital markets. Okay, so I'm pleased to say that as I speak to you today, we are in the process of launching in 2021 a $500 million bond program in Nigeria. That will be the equivalent of 250 billion nairas that are going to be used to support low-cost housing projects in Nigeria. So that's very exciting. I've just come from Nigeria now. I actually came this morning to ensure that we're on board in that. So we're on track. August, September, we should be launching that. And then that will allow us to mitigate the biggest problem of our clients, whereby they couldn't handle the foreign exchange exposure risk because we were always lending to them in dollars. But now Shelter Africa will be lending in local currencies. Again, that's $500 million in Nigeria, which is West Africa. In East Africa, we will be looking at launching first ever an East Africa bond that will cover Rwanda, Uganda, Tanzania, and of course Kenya for 500 million as well. We'll be working with the Capital Markets Authority on that. It's very exciting. So those countries can be able to draw housing loans in local currency. This includes big established developers and also, of course, tier 1, tier 2 banks that are into housing finance. And then, of course, the Francophone side, we expect to be looking at the same, maybe 200 million for Francophone West Africa. So we've been very excited because the bond program is on board. And of course, we are approaching our existing developmental financial institution lenders that we fully paid up for new fresh loans because they're able to give us long-term loans at a very competitive interest rate to allow us then to on-lend that on a wholesale basis to other banks in Africa, in the 44 countries we operate in, and of course, to other developers.
Right. Well, we do have to leave it there, Mr. Chimponda. We'll certainly be watching closely, and thank you so much for your insights today. That, of course, was Mr. Andrew Chimponda, Managing Director at Shelter Afrique. Moving on now, the World Bank says about 50% of Nigerians want to leave the country to seek better economic opportunities abroad. Now, a recent report said that unemployment and other socio-economic challenges have contributed to people trying to leave the country in search of improved lives elsewhere. Here's CGTN's Kelechi Emekalam with more.
31-year-old Nwaneka Nweze lives in Nigeria's capital, Abuja. The 2014 graduate of microbiology turned to professional beadmaking after her years of job hunting didn't yield much. Her business, too, has been on a downward spiral. She complains that doing well in an economy like that of Nigeria has become increasingly difficult. So leaving the country is now top on her agenda.
I applied for Nigerian prisons, I applied for Nigerian immigration, I applied for so many federal parastatals, but I couldn't get. So I was like, okay, focus on your bead making. And even like now till now, it's still a struggle, but still no job yet. Lately, I can't even make up to 4,000 naira, but before I used to make up to 10. The cost of materials are very high. Started searching the web, looking for a scholarship that can get free scholarship to the next to study and just leave this country, and I'm just done. I know that I have a good skill, and yeah, the government doesn't appreciate it. Outside there, you can actually access a loan. You know, they can give you a loan to start up your business and make your life a little bit easier.
Nwaneka is among millions of Nigerians who are desperate to relocate abroad. A recent report by the World Bank revealed that about 50% of Nigerians want to migrate in search of greener pastures. That's 20% more than the figure recorded in 2014.
I'm tired of this country. And everywhere, every day, you'll just be thinking about how to make it. And when you wake up, you'll be thinking how to put food in your mouth. There's no any other alternative. Go to school, you will not see job.
My passport is ready. Any opportunity, if given a visa, I'll fly out, and that's it for me.
Experts say the number of those who want to leave the country could be higher.
Human beings naturally gravitate to better environments, socio-economic, political environments. And that is because the government of the country or the country itself has not been doing so well And so people definitely want to go to different greener pastures, so to speak, where they feel their potentials or opportunities will be harnessed, and you have better potentials in terms of getting jobs and even health, education, and medical treatments. So that statistics for me is even low.
For several years, Nigeria has been experiencing brain drain. Key sectors like health and the academia are some of the worst hit. The West African nation spends billions of dollars training professionals only to lose them to other countries. To reverse the trend, experts say Nigeria would have to improve workers' wages, condition of service, infrastructural development, and policies that would enable businesses to flourish. Kelechi Emekalam, CGTN Abuja, Nigeria.
And moving on now, African nations have been facing shortages in electricity supply, largely due to mismanagement and poor infrastructure. Now, countries such as South Africa and Nigeria continue to face a drop in supply, which has affected production in some industries. Well, in a bid to curb those losses, the Zambian government recently launched the first unit of the Kafue hydropower station. Now, the Chinese-built and financed plant is set to plug an additional 750 megawatts of power into the country's national grid. Of course, President Edgar Lungu says the investment will allow Zambia to become an electricity hub in southern Africa. Well, let's find out more about this project. We're now joined by Johnston Chikwanda, board chair of the Rural Electrification Authority of Zambia. Great to have you with us today, Mr. Chikwanda. Now, of course, this new project, the Kafue Gorge Lower Hydropower Station, that was expected to add an additional 750 megawatts to the national grid. How much closer is the country to this goal with, of course, this recent commissioning of one of its turbines?
Yeah, thank you so much for hosting me, and good evening to you, and good evening, viewers. The Kafue Lower Gorge power plant is Zambia's flagship power project, which indeed is supposed to harvest for the country 750 megawatts of power. But of course, you have to commission in a phased approach. So a couple of weeks ago, the president commissioned 150 megawatts, which is now being evacuated into the national grid. We expect the remaining 4 units to come online by the end of this year. This is because in the last quarter of last year, the President of the Republic of Zambia, when he launched the Economic Recovery Plan, he did allude to the fact that this particular project was expected to be completed by the end of 2020. We are very excited. This is a game changer for us. There is no load shedding in the country. Zambia has now become one of the few countries in sub-Saharan Africa without any load shedding. Load shedding in this country has completely come to an end, and we hope that as the remaining units are coming on, Zambia is poised to become a significant net exporter of energy in the sub-region, thereby contributing to stabilizing the energy security in the region.
Right. Well, in addition to this particular project, we know the government had embarked on a number of mixed energy projects driven by both the public and private sector. President Lungu himself said so far they've introduced an additional 1,350 megawatts of power generation to your national grid. So give us an update on what progress the sector as a whole has seen.
Yeah, the development of the power sector in Zambia is informed by the 7th National Development Plan. That is the plan which informs, guides, and mentors how government intends to develop the power project. When the Patriotic Front government, which is the current government in power, took over in 2011, the country was generating about 1,900 megawatts of power. But as of now, within 10 years, 1,350 megawatts has been added, which is about 70% of new generation being added. Of course, this is being achieved through the ongoing energy sector reforms. As you know, that we have a lot of challenges in the structure of the electricity subsector in the sub-Saharan continent, and it requires significant amount of reforms. So government embarked on reforms of the sector to expand the generation, to change the regulatory framework so that it can attract more investment and allow for alternative supplies of energy into the energy portfolio, to the energy mix. So during this period under review, we have seen significant amount of alternative forms of energy in form of thermal energy, which has entered the energy portfolio. We have seen also significant amount of solar energy, which has entered into the energy mix. We have completed the energy resource mapping for wind. So we expect to start harvesting from wind as well, and also from renewable energy, which is going on. So what is going on is absolutely unprecedented in this country in terms of electrification of the country. And we can only be admired and be learned from by what we are doing in this country.
Certainly great progress. We do have to leave it there, Mr. Chikwanda, but thank you so much for joining us on the show today and for giving us your insights. That, of course, was Johnston Chikwanda, board chair of the Rural Electrification Authority of Zambia. And moving on, Libya has reopened the main coastal road that connects its eastern and western cities. The road had been closed since a military offensive in 2019 by the Libyan National Army, which was to capture the capital, Tripoli. Here's our correspondent, Adel El Marhoui, with the details.
For 2 years, the main highway that connects Libya's western cities to the eastern ones has been blocked. Over a month ago, Prime Minister Abdelhamid Dbeibeh opened the coastal road from his home city Tripoli. Yet the Libyan National Army resisted the move. It wasn't until Friday that the commander of the LNA, Khalifa Haftar, announced the operation of the vital road on the other end.
The convoys that moved between the east and the west used to travel an additional 700 kilometers because of the coastal road closure. Now, thank God, this is an excellent facilitation to the Libyan people. I think the way the reopening was announced is more of a political propaganda for Khalifa Haftar, who may run for president in the next election.
The 5+5 Joint Military Commission, a body that includes representatives of Eastern and Western forces, approved the reopening of the road after removing almost all security threats. All armed forces have withdrawn 5 kilometers south of the highway. Landmines were cleared, giving a 200-meter buffer on both sides of the road. Militia groups, though, are the remaining obstacle against a regular flow of vehicles on that vital connector between Libyan cities.
After agreeing on the reopening of the coastal road, we called for a meeting with the UN Libyan envoy Jan Kubish in Geneva with the sponsor nations of the Berlin Conference to discuss the evacuation of militias and foreign fighters that will guarantee the safety of the coastal road and Libya's stability.
Libya's neighbors have welcomed the reopening of the coastal road. The UN support mission in Libya named it a historical achievement. That's not just for simply allowing cars to travel on a highway, but rather because rival Libyan factions have agreed on something. And that is a great indication that division is fading and that Libyans might, after all, agree on holding their elections. Adel Marhoui, CGTN, Cairo.
You're watching Global Business Africa. Let's take a quick break now. Still to come. A ban on American investments in 59 Chinese firms takes effect on Monday. And Greece banking on the summer holidays for a big tourism comeback.
Business in Africa is at the crossroads. We celebrate those who are adopting and thriving despite the challenges. from grassroots to big businesses. Global Business takes you along for the ride as we track the making of a giant. Only on CGTN.
How will your world change today? What happens here? What happens there? Or what you make happen for yourself? If it matters to you, it matters to us too. Your stories are the stories that need to be told. Africa Live. Find your voice.
I try to not let it affect me, but there are days when it does. I'm a human being, and to see patients in a hospital bed and their family members are not there, there's no one there to hold their hand, that human touch, you know?
I just hope everyone can remember that the situation is not permanent and that everything will get better eventually.
And now to some international news. An executive order from U.S. President Joe Biden took effect on Monday. It is to ban American investment in 59 Chinese firms. Now, Beijing has criticized the move and threatened countermeasures. Here's CGTN's Zhao Yunfei reporting.
Biden has expanded a Trump-era order to restrict Chinese companies. It bans Americans from trading securities of dozens of Chinese companies with alleged links to the Chinese military. The blacklist was first signed by President Trump last November. China Telecom and China Mobile were among the 31 firms. In June, President Biden added 28 companies to the list, which now has a total of 59 companies. It takes effect on August 2nd. Biden's executive order cites security concerns, while Beijing calls it an abuse of the concept of national security.
China urges the United States to respect market laws and principles, cancel these so-called lists that suppress Chinese companies, and provide Chinese companies with a fair, just and non-discriminatory business and investment environment. China will take necessary measures to resolutely safeguard the legitimate rights and interests of Chinese enterprises.
An expert says the move is an attempt by the U.S. to decouple from China.
This is actually a political situation in that country, and they would like to find some enemy or adversary for their own sake, for some specific groups of interests to take China as the threat. It's not good for the relationship between the two countries, and of course it's not good for the public in the two countries.
Professor Tang says high-tech companies in both countries will be affected, but the U.S. cannot restrict China's progress in technological innovation.
The development of high-tech and science is a natural development for any country, for any individual. At this moment, the United States can not stop it, stop the cooperation, stop the development.
Professor Tang says while the Biden administration has continued his predecessor's aggressive approach against China, it is unlikely China will make any compromises in the area of technology. He says the two sides should seek a new model for future cooperation. Zhao Yunfei, CGTN, Beijing.
Meanwhile, in China, a conference on the digital economy has kicked off in Beijing. The event aims to build a platform to help develop the world digital economy. Now, organizers say it will cover topics such as industrial digital transformation and the development of e-commerce. This comes as major online platforms in China vow to better protect users' personal data. Here's Xie Yongshu telling us more.
major Chinese e-commerce platforms including Alibaba, Jingdong and Douyin have announced they will encrypt the names, phone numbers and addresses of consumers involved in transactions. By applying the measures, the information of users will be protected from platform staff, sellers and delivery people. The goal is to strengthen privacy, as vulnerabilities in the area have led to a rise in cold calls and telecom fraud in recent years.
One
day you sign up on an app, the next day your privacy is sold elsewhere. I once got a phone call from Hong Kong. The guy knew my full name and tried to trick me and say I was involved in money laundering, but I knew it was fraud.
A man with a non-local accent once called me, directly addressing me by name and claiming to be my superior by demanding that I meet him at his office. But I never had a superior with an accent like that, so I hung up.
An expert in data security says encrypting certain information does not eliminate all risks to privacy leaks, but he says it is still progress.
There was an investigative report in 2017 done by Alibaba. It showed more than half of all privacy leaks are inside jobs committed by platform staff, sellers, and delivery services. Through encryption, at least 20% of the parties involved will be restricted from obtaining personal data.
Experts say many e-platforms have not spent enough money and put in the efforts needed to protect the privacy of users. And they say things have only recently started to change, following a tightening legal and regulatory environment.
The data security law taking effect in a month sets the maximum fine at 10 million yuan for the illegal collection or processing of data. And China's draft law on personal information protection has even gone further, setting the maximum penalty of 50 million yuan or 5% annual income for any company that fails to protect it.
These two acts of legislation are revolutionary in terms of protecting personal information. Protecting privacy costs money, so companies don't want to do it. This is the status quo. Only national legislation can make companies pay attention to the issue.
Wang adds that large-scale privacy leaks could endanger national security, another reason why government is speeding up legislation in the area. Xie Hongzhou, CGTN, Beijing.
Meanwhile, fully vaccinated travelers from the United States and the European Union can now visit the UK without a quarantine. The relaxation of rules affects passengers arriving from countries on the UK's amber list, with France the only exception. Here's CGTN's correspondent Nawid Jabrakil reporting.
Reunited at last. For the first time in months, people from the US and the EU can now come to the UK without the need to quarantine on arrival. Welcome news for the millions potentially impacted.
We got married during the pandemic, and it's really exciting to come here and spend the whole amount of time with him and his family instead of having to sit by myself for a couple weeks.
So last time I was here was kind of Christmas of 2019. So last year I think was a tough year for a lot of people, a lot of families. And I think we're part of like the first wave of US residents coming in with part of the new restrictions being released, which is really exciting.
Very happy, very happy. As you can imagine, coming home after such a long time can be so exciting.
It won't be business as usual though. Passengers will still need to take a COVID-19 test before departure and another on the second day after arriving. France is currently excluded from the changes, but for London's Heathrow Airport, once the busiest in the world, getting international travel moving again is vital.
Aviation is all about connectivity, and we're a small island nation, we're a trading nation, and yet our air routes have been grounded for the last 18 months. Now finally we can start getting back to normal, and in particular connect with the United States, our biggest single trading partner.
The industry says this is a positive move, but it wants things to open up even quicker. Fewer than 1 million passengers passed through Heathrow in June. That's down almost 90% on pre-pandemic levels. Airports and the wider travel sector here want more destinations to have quarantine-free travel when rules are reviewed again this week.
But new watch lists for certain locations will mean travel remains uncertain and likely to put off many people from booking trips. Meanwhile, the economic cost is mounting, with almost 10% of the UK economy dependent on travel and tourism. Chancellor Rishi Sunak is among those pushing for restrictions to ease. But with coronavirus variants previously coming in from abroad and the virus still spreading here, officials say they'll be cautious about moving any quicker. Nawij Barkil, CGTN, London.
Now, after a staggering drop of nearly 75% in 2020, Greece's tourism sector is now eyeing a big comeback this summer, judging by the early crowds. Now, rising coronavirus cases, slow vaccination rates and strict curbs imposed by other European governments could still dampen the tourist flows. Here's CGTN's Evangelo Sipsas reporting.
The sound of the bouzouki can be heard once again on the narrow streets of Athens as the Greek capital welcomes tourists. These small marble streets that seemed almost deserted last year due to the pandemic are now once again a meeting point. The sound of English, German and French brings joy and hope to the business owners.
There is no comparison with last year. Last year, everything seemed deserted and most shops were shut. But things are picking up now. Not as much as we were expecting, but it's getting better.
Despite the increase in cases in the country, holidaymakers from all over the world continue to visit Greece this summer. According to data analytics firm Cirium, Greece has a higher proportion of pre-pandemic level flights operating than other European holiday destinations. The number of flights in July is up 130% on the same period in 2020. From May to July, a total of 2.3 million visitors came to Greece, compared to only 660,000 last year. The president of the Hellenic Chamber of Hotels says the increase in numbers would not be possible if the government had not taken swift measures.
We are in collaboration and discussion with the government constantly in order to fine-tune this help that is still needed from the sector, because obviously, like we said, we're better than last year, but we're still very far from normality numbers. So this is the first way that the government has contributed to this, because if we didn't have that, we would be in a very different state.
While Brits remain worried of coming to Greece, put off by the prospect of having to quarantine once returning back home, visitors from Poland, France, and Germany have led the way. In June, more than 260,000 German tourists visited the country, demonstrating their confidence. But their government is considering declaring Greece a COVID high-risk zone. That move would bring a headache to the Greek tourism industry.
We're pushing data, the real data, through the different governments in order to make informed decisions. Of course, we cannot say to Germany whether they should categorize us in A, B, C. That's their own rules, their own decisions. It's a sovereign decision. But we, if you like, I want to put this in quotes, demand that they base their decision on the real data and not on fictitious data.
The safeguard Greece is putting in place is to demand proof of vaccination or a negative COVID test 72 hours upon arrival, but also mandatory tests 3 times a week for anyone working in hospitality. With new measures almost every month and mandatory vaccination for its citizens, the Greek government says it's doing everything it can to keep the sun shining on Greek tourism. Evangelo Sipsas for CGTN, Athens, Greece.
And shifting focus now, let's take a look at commodity markets today. Oil prices falling as worries over China's economy resurfaced after a survey showing growth in factory activity slipping sharply in the world's second largest oil consumer. Consumers suddenly pushed forward some concerns. Also, concerns were compounded by higher crude output from OPEC producers. Meanwhile, gold prices edging lower today as the dollar held steady, with cautious investors eyeing July's non-farm payrolls or jobs data due later this week. On that note, let's take a short break. Still to come. Africa's most populous nation turns to prefabrication housing technology. And teenage girls learn robotics in one of Nigeria's conservative Muslim cities.
Africa is a continent of diversity, with varied climates and enchanting geography, and a people so distinct, but with a shared enduring spirit. We are at the heart of the continent to bring you the untold stories.
Let's have a look.
We celebrate Africa as it shapes its own destiny.
Tunis, Cairo,
Juba,
Johannesburg, Ethiopia,
Tanzania.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
You don't find the stories of North Africa by sitting on the sidelines. No one else will take you where we can in North Africa. And no one else will show you what it's all about. CGTN, see the difference.
Now, home developers in Nigeria are now looking to adopt prefab housing technology as an alternative to concrete houses. They say it will help the West African nation bridge its housing deficit of about 17 million units. Materials used in prefabrication building include concrete, steel and wood. Here's CGTN's Kelechi Emekalam with the details.
Construction workers knocking and fusing metals together at Prefab World, a mobile shelter company in Nigeria's capital, Abuja. The company modifies and converts cabins and containers into portable homes. The major materials used are metal and steel, a shift from mortar and blocks.
Basically, to the situation of housing in Abuja, we thought of something like this to help people, and they are very fast to construct, not like our regular blocks that takes time. They are very friendly in shapes, so all this are really what prefabs are all about. We deliver to anywhere. We can go there to assemble. We can take them here just with the use of IAB crane.
A report by PricewaterhouseCoopers revealed that Nigeria has a housing deficit of 17 million units. The nation would need to construct 700,000 houses yearly to close the housing gap. But just about 100,000 houses are built annually. A basic 3-bedroom flat could cost $30,000 or even more. And with a weak mortgage structure, low-income earners are unable to afford houses. Prefabricated buildings are seen as a much cheaper alternative.
It's actually a good way of solving housing needs because, number one, you can take hectares of land and you can build as many structures as possible. They are not constrained by size of land. Why? Because the container is already, the prefab is already standard size. And again, the speed at which you build prefab houses is way faster. And if you want to remove the structure, it's very easy. You uncouple all the parts and then ship it out again, couple it wherever you want to use it. Prefab technology, especially, is mostly useful for low-income earners. Instead of building, estates that are gulping billions, you can invest those. The Nigerian government can invest this amount of money into all these prefab structures for low-income earners.
A prefab building costs nearly 50% less than concrete buildings. They're said to be durable and more sustainable in saving up to 53% carbon emissions. That's why key players in the housing sector want the government to leverage on prefab technology to resolve the nation's mass housing deficit. Kelechi Emekalam, CGTN Abuja, Nigeria.
Meanwhile, teenage girls in Kano, Nigeria are now learning robotics, among other STEM subjects. They are all part of an initiative aimed at opening their minds in a region where education for girls is often not a priority. Here's CGTN's Joy Kiriki-Juma reporting.
Teenage girls learning robotics, an innovative project by Kabara NGO. It seeks to challenge local views of what girls should be doing in a socially conservative Muslim society. The education of girls in Kano, Nigeria is often cut short. They are expected to marry young.
I came to Kabara to learn robotics, and I have created a lot of things in robotics like paper crinkler, spin in row, spin art machine, and I am happy to share this with my younger ones and the community at large for the growth of our society.
The Kabara initiative is an education success story in northern Nigeria. The brains behind it is engineer Hadiza Garbati.
The whole ideology behind that is to be able to teach them a particular way to think, to reason. It's a logical reasoning. And we found that our girls, even though some of them might not be good at traditional mathematics, they've displayed superior intellect in understanding the way equipments and machines work, and basic concepts of physics and basic concepts in mathematics without necessarily understanding what the subject is. And we think that that is the future.
Over 1,000 children have been abducted from schools in the northwestern states. Kabara has been unaffected by the security crisis plaguing learning institutions. But Garbati had to overcome another challenge: resistance from parents.
The traditional challenges you have of allowing the kids to come out, we've been able to tackle that through the patronage as discussed, and of course providing an environment that supports Islamic rules and regulations as well, allows for growth and allows for opportunity for engagement.
Crucial to the success of Kabara has been support from Nasiru Wada, a close advisor to the Emir of Kano, a local religious figurehead who has strong moral authority in the community.
Tradition tends to not say discourage, but does not put enough emphasis on the education of the girl child, with the belief that, at a certain age, she'll get married, she'll become a housewife. But some fail to see or understand that even a married woman is a manager.
The Kabara initiative was launched in 2016 and has trained over 200 children in the sciences. The children have also attained basic vocational skills such as in goldsmithing and photography. The team hopes to expand across various northern Nigeria states pending the end of security challenges. Joy Kiriki-Juma, CGTN.
And before we leave you today, a quick look at Africa's currencies. Now, Nigeria's Naira finally gaining at Forex markets as we saw the dollar supply rising by 108.5% and as demand begins to subside. Now, it closed lower at around 411.24 Nairas per dollar at the official investors and exporters window. It also appreciated at the parallel market, closing at around 550 Naira per dollar. And that, of course, is from around 520 per dollar on the previous day. Meanwhile, South Africa's rand edging lower in early trading, then shrugging off those losses to rise 0.3% on the day. The currency has been struggling for direction in the absence of local catalysts, with investors eyeing monthly U.S. jobs data due at the end of this week. Well, that's it for this edition of Global Business Africa. Remember, you can send your feedback to the contacts on your screen. You can also follow us on our various digital media platforms. From me, Uche Okoronkwo, and the rest of the team, thanks for watching.